Every morning, roughly 2 billion people around the world crack open a chicken egg without giving it a second thought. You fry it, scramble it, boil it, drop it into pancake batter, and tomorrow, somehow, there is another one, then another the day after that. But walk outside and look at almost any wild bird. A robin might lay 4 or 5 eggs in spring. A duck lays a clutch, raises her young, and stops. Sparrows, hawks, songbirds, most of them follow the same basic rule. They reproduce when the season is right. Then the system shuts down. That pattern is ancient. Birds have been tying reproduction to daylight, temperature, food, and season for well over 100 million years. And then humans took one small jungle bird from Southeast Asia and turned it into an animal capable of producing more than 300 eggs a year. That is not a small improvement. That is a complete rewrite of what a bird's reproductive system was built to do. So how do you get from a hen that lays a handful of eggs in spring to one that can produce an egg almost every single day? The answer starts in the forests of Southeast Asia. That is where the ancestor of the modern chicken still lives today. The red junglefowl, Gallus gallus. If you saw one in the wild, you would recognize it immediately. The males have bright orange and green feathers, long curved tails, and the unmistakable shape of a rooster. The females are smaller, brown, and mottled, almost disappearing into the leaves beneath them. But there is one major difference. A wild junglefowl hen does not wake up every morning ready to make another egg. Her reproductive system watches the sun. And birds have a surprisingly direct way of doing that. Light entering through the eyes and even penetrating the thin bones of the skull can reach light-sensitive systems deep inside the brain. Those systems track the length of the day. When the days begin getting longer, the bird's brain reads that as a message. Spring is coming. Time to reproduce. That signal activates the hypothalamus, which releases a hormone called GnRH. GnRH tells the pituitary gland to release 2 more hormones, follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Those hormones activate the ovary. Follicles mature. Ovulation begins. Eggs start forming. In a wild junglefowl, this entire system is closely tied to the season. A hen might lay 5 or 6 eggs over a short period, sit on them for about 3 weeks, raise the chicks, and then stop. And from an evolutionary point of view, that makes perfect sense. Because eggs are expensive. They require fat, protein, calcium, pigments, water, and a huge amount of metabolic work. Every resource a hen puts into an egg is a resource she cannot use to maintain her own body. And in nature, producing more eggs is not automatically better. A bird does not win by laying the most eggs. It wins by raising the most offspring that actually survive. A robin could theoretically produce a much larger clutch. But if 10 chicks hatch and the parents can only find enough food for 5 of them, those extra eggs were not an advantage. For millions of generations, the system rewarded timing, not overproduction. Then humans entered the story. Thousands of years ago, early farming communities in Southeast Asia began keeping junglefowl close to their villages. And strangely enough, eggs may not even have been the main reason at first. The birds could be used for meat, ritual, fighting, and roosters came with a useful feature. They announced the morning with almost mechanical reliability. Eggs were a bonus. But at some point, someone noticed something that would eventually change the biology of the entire species. If you took an egg out of the nest before the hen finished laying her clutch, she often produced another one. That sounds almost too simple to matter. It mattered enormously. Junglefowl are what reproductive biologists call indeterminate layers. Instead of always producing one rigid, predetermined number of eggs, the hen can respond to what is happening in the nest. She lays, she senses the clutch, and when the nest reaches the right point, signals help push her towards stopping egg production and beginning incubation. But remove an egg early enough, and that stop signal can be delayed. So imagine an early farmer. The hen lays an egg. The farmer takes it. The nest still is not complete. The hen lays another. The farmer takes that one too. The hen keeps trying to finish a clutch that keeps disappearing. Without knowing anything about hormones, ovaries, or genes, humans had discovered a biological lever, and then we pulled it for thousands of years. The rule was simple: keep the hens that lay more eggs. Breed from those birds. The hens that lay fewer eggs are less likely to produce the next generation. Repeat that across villages, kingdoms, trade routes, and centuries, and tiny biological differences begin stacking on top of one another. Some hens mature follicles faster, some produce yolk more efficiently, some keep laying longer, and some are less sensitive to the seasonal signals that would normally tell a wild bird to stop. Humans did not need to understand why. They only had to notice which birds gave them more eggs. Eventually, people discovered another lever: light. Ancient poultry keepers learned that keeping hens exposed to light for longer periods could encourage them to keep laying. Roman agricultural writers even described using artificial light inside chicken houses. They had no idea what GnRH was. They had never heard of deep brain photoreceptors. But they had discovered the practical rule: longer light could mean more eggs. For centuries, that was enough. Then modern genetics revealed something far deeper. In 2010, researchers comparing domestic chickens with wild red junglefowl found a major genetic signature of domestication involving a gene called TSHR, the thyroid-stimulating hormone receptor. And TSHR happens to sit inside the biological network connecting light, seasonal timing, and reproduction. In the ancestral system, the changing length of the day helps tell the reproductive machinery when it is time to switch on. Domestic chickens carry a strongly selected version of TSHR associated with much weaker dependence on that old seasonal schedule. Think of the ancestral system like a door with a lock. Spring sunlight helps provide the key. Humans selected chickens in which that lock stopped mattering nearly as much. The ovary no longer had to wait for the same narrow seasonal permission. And this TSHR variant became extremely widespread across domestic chickens. That tells us something important. Any bird that could reproduce for more of the year had an enormous advantage, not in the forest, but in the farmyard. But here is the part that matters. TSHR does not explain 300 eggs a year by itself. It helps explain how the seasonal brake was weakened. But taking your foot off the brake does not automatically turn a car into a race car. To get an egg almost every day, humans had to reshape the rest of the machine too. Modern laying breeds were selected for faster follicle development, efficient yolk production, rapid shell formation, and extremely tight ovulation intervals. And once you understand what it takes to build just one egg, those numbers start to look almost ridiculous. A chicken egg takes roughly 25 to 27 hours to form. It begins when a mature yolk is released from the ovary. The yolk enters the top of the oviduct, where fertilization would happen if a rooster were present. Then it moves into the magnum, where layers of albumin, the egg white, are wrapped around it. Next come the membranes. And finally, the developing egg reaches the shell gland. This is where the hen spends roughly 20 hours building the hard calcium carbonate shell around the entire thing, crystal by crystal. Then she lays the egg, and almost immediately, the system prepares to do it again. The calcium demand is enormous. A hen producing hundreds of eggs a year has to move an astonishing amount of calcium through her body just to build shells. To handle that, laying hens use a specialized kind of tissue called medullary bone. You can think of it as a fast-access calcium account. During shell formation, calcium is pulled from those reserves and released into the bloodstream. Between eggs, dietary calcium helps rebuild them. Wild junglefowl have this system too, but they use it intensely for a short reproductive season. A modern laying hen may cycle it again and again, month after month. The system was built for a sprint. We selected it to run a marathon. And if hidden biology like this is your kind of thing, subscribe now, because the next part is where the story stops being just about genetics. It becomes engineering. Walk into a modern commercial laying facility and almost every major variable affecting egg production has been controlled. Start with light. Commercial hens can receive around 14 to 16 hours of carefully managed light every day, regardless of what the season is doing outside. December can look like June. Winter never really arrives. From the hen's reproductive system's point of view, she is living in something close to permanent spring. And even though domestic chickens are far less dependent on seasonal daylight than their wild ancestors, light still matters. It still acts like an accelerator. Temperature is controlled too. When hens become heat-stressed, laying rates can fall and shell quality can suffer. So commercial facilities use ventilation, cooling, and insulation to keep conditions inside a relatively narrow range. Then there is nutrition. Feed for laying hens is engineered around the materials needed to manufacture eggs continuously. Protein, specific amino acids, calcium, vitamin D, energy. A high-producing hen may consume a little over 100 grams of feed in a day and turn a huge portion of that nutritional input into an egg weighing around 60 grams. Combine genetics, artificial light, temperature control, and precision feeding, and you get one of the most productive animals humans have ever developed. A modern commercial layer can produce around 300 eggs in a year. Certain high-performance lines under optimized conditions can sustain extraordinary production for much longer. An egg roughly every 25 or 26 hours. Again, and again, and again. And this is where the story changes. Because the distance between the wild junglefowl and the modern laying hen is not just impressive, it has consequences. Making an egg every day does not make the biological cost disappear. It means the bill arrives every day too. One of the clearest problems is skeletal damage. Every shell requires calcium, and when the demand for calcium becomes extreme, the hen's skeleton can pay the price. The keel bone, the large ridge of bone running along the chest, is especially vulnerable. Studies of commercial laying hens have found extremely high rates of keel bone fractures and deformities. Some birds develop breaks that heal badly. Some end up with visibly distorted bones, and they can continue laying through it. The reproductive tract can fail too. Constant activity is associated with disorders such as salpingitis, and inflammation of the oviduct, and egg yolk peritonitis, where yolk material ends up inside the abdominal cavity instead of moving normally through the reproductive tract. Then there is ovarian cancer. Domestic laying hens are actually used as a research model for human ovarian cancer, partly because they ovulate so frequently. Every ovulation involves tissue disruption, then repair, then another ovulation, then another repair. More cycles mean more opportunities for cellular mistakes. The same reproductive output that makes the bird economically valuable also pushes her biology into territory a wild junglefowl would almost never experience. And you can see that difference even among domestic chickens. Heritage breeds like Plymouth Rocks, Sussex, Australorps, and Orpingtons usually produce fewer eggs than specialized commercial layers. Many also slow down noticeably when winter days get shorter. It is almost like a faint echo of the ancestral clock is still ticking inside them. And this is where chickens become especially interesting compared with other domesticated animals. Humans reshape dogs into everything from Chihuahuas to Great Danes, but their reproductive biology still follows a recognizable canine pattern. We bred dairy cattle to produce dramatically more milk, but milk production is still fundamentally connected to pregnancy and calving. We selected sheep for heavy, continuous wool growth, but seasonal biology still matters. With chickens, humans pushed directly against the calendar itself. We took a reproductive system synchronized with sunlight, season, food, and chick survival and repeatedly favored birds, that could keep going when those old signals said stop. And there is one final layer to this story, one that makes the egg in your refrigerator much stranger than it looks. Birds are dinosaurs, not related to dinosaurs in some distant, vague way. Modern birds are the surviving branch of theropod dinosaurs, and many of the basic pieces of their reproductive system are incredibly ancient. The ovary, the oviduct, the calcified shell, the process of wrapping an egg in albumin, membranes, and then armor, made from calcium carbonate. Humans did not invent any of that. Evolution built the basic machinery tens of millions of years before our species existed. When a hen builds an eggshell today, she is running a biological program whose roots stretch deep into the age of dinosaurs. And that is what makes the ordinary chicken egg extraordinary. We found an ancient system. Then, little by little, we learned where the controls were. We removed eggs from nests and discovered that hens would replace them. We bred the birds that kept producing. We selected genetic changes that weakened seasonal limits. We extended daylight. We optimized nutrition. We controlled temperature. Generation after generation, we pushed an ancient reproductive machine toward continuous output. And somehow, it worked. But it did not become free. The cost shows up in calcium demand, fragile bones, damaged reproductive systems, disease, bodies being asked to maintain a pace their wild ancestors never had to sustain. So the next time you crack an egg on some completely ordinary Wednesday morning, consider what that small, smooth object actually represents. The strange part is not that there is a yolk inside. The strange part is that another egg will probably be there tomorrow, and another after that. Meanwhile, somewhere in the forests of Southeast Asia, a wild junglefowl hen is still following the older schedule. The days get longer. Something ancient inside her brain notices. Her reproductive system wakes up. She lays a small clutch. She raises her chicks. Then she stops. She has no idea that her domestic relatives now number in the billions. No idea that humans spent thousands of years turning her basic reproductive machinery into something almost unrecognizable. Same ancestor. Same basic biological equipment. Completely different rules. And that leaves us with a question much bigger than chickens. When one species learns how to reach inside the biology of another species and rewrite the rules, what exactly counts as success? Is it 300 eggs a year? Is it efficiency? Is it the fact that the system can be pushed that far and still function? Or do we also have to count what the animal gives up to make that productivity possible? Because the story of the chicken is not really a story about breakfast. It is a story about what happens when humans discover the controls inside an ancient biological machine and decide that stop is no longer one of the settings. If you want more deep dives into the hidden biology behind animals we think we already understand, subscribe and keep watching. Because once you start looking beneath the surface, even the most ordinary animals stop being ordinary.